Welcome to Real Health with me, Karl Henry. Folks, from pregnancy to postnatal recovery to menopause, every stage of a woman's life brings unique fitness challenges. How soon can you exercise again after giving birth? And why is lifting weights so important in midlife and beyond? Women's fitness expert Georgy Dillon has helped clients at every age and stage, guiding them to build strength, resilience and confidence for the long term. Georgy, welcome to studio. How's it going?
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
How's life?
Good. It's busy. Just busy with clients, busy with kids, busy with business, just everything, just the cocktail of fun.
Multitasking.
Always. That's me.
Chat to me about women and weights. Is my perception of it between kind of work, my own PT and Instagram and stuff, is that it's become more popular, more accepting and more normalised in the last couple of years than we've ever seen before.
I think so, absolutely. So a lot of people will get information from the likes of social media and they will see, fitness routines, exercise routines, the benefits of strength training, but also there's been so much research recently as well about the benefits it can have on the body. I think previously, in kind of older generations, they would see something like weight training as, oh, I'm bulking, I'm going to get massive muscles like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that, when actually we're trying to focus more on longevity, strength. So is it for lifting kids? Is it to live longer? Is it for bone health and just general overall health rather than just kind of there for the aesthetic side of things?
And there's a greater scope, isn't there, from a weights perspective in terms of where people can start. It's become more accessible. They can take it up to high rocks or to competitions if they want. But there's a greater scope now than ever before for all fitness levels, for women and men. But for this episode, we're focusing on women to start lifting weights, to start doing weight training and to get more confident around lifting weights.
100%. So I think with resistance training that we have to break it down a bit, because I think a lot of people would almost feel a bit intimidated by going into a gym, looking at the barbells, looking at, some men in the corner lifting really heavy and grunting, and they think, oh, okay, I'm just going to lift up these 2 kg weights. Resistance training can be all different types. So it can be body weight, which has its time and its place in a women's lifespan. But then there's also resistance bands. So if you don't have access to a gym, you can use things like resistance bands at home. I encourage a lot of the mums who are on my programs, if they're traveling, for example, they can pack their resistance bands with them so they can continue with their exercise routine while they're away or traveling, or perhaps, they just want to do something from home and they don't want to travel to the gym because of time. But then when you're in a gym environment, you do have all of these machines and dumbbells and kettlebells and barbells. And I think it can be a little bit of a playground, but I think for a lot of women who don't know what they're doing, it can feel intimidating. So I think that's where the knowledge comes in, where we can help sort of explain just the importance of getting going, getting started, and actually being able to push yourself with resistance. Because I'll see women going into the gym or coming into my classes and, they've got a toddler at home and they've got a newborn baby or, a couple of months old anyway, and they'll reach over for the 3 kgs. And I was like, your handbag is heavier than that. You need to be lifting heavy. Your toddler is way heavier than that. Think about the baby in the car seat. That's heavier than that. So you've got to have the courage and also believe in yourself that you can lift heavier as well. And it's giving them that support that they're not going to suddenly become really bulky straight away overnight. It takes a lot of protein, a lot of consistency, and a lot of heavy lifting to get massive, massive muscles. And I think there's also a lot of noise around women wanting to tone. And it's one sort of statement that always gets me. It's like,
let it out, Georgie. Go for it. Go on.
It's like, I really want to get toned arms for the summer. And you're just like, okay.
Why does it bother you?
Do you know what it is? It's because there is this whole cohort of people who will say, this is the best for toning your arms, toning your legs.
Oh, spot reducing. Okay. That's where you're at. Okay, that's what you're at there.
Yeah, spot reducing, but also making it kind of like pop. And it's like, all it is strength training. That's all it is. It's a well-conditioned muscle. And you've got lean body fat. That's what it is. It's a combination of those two things. So when you start saying to people, like, I really want to get toned, it's like, great, lift that heavy thing over there. And that's where you're going to start seeing women, I think, getting more excited about resistance training rather than fearing it as well.
There are 2 things there that are important. One is that gym intimidation. It's very valid. I can understand it. And for anyone listening in, think, oh yeah, that's me. I'm just too scared. They're all buff and they know what they're doing, or they're all, ripped or whatever. It is a very valid barrier to going to a gym or going to a class. one that we can be overcome quite easily, but it's easy to understand that fear. Where people are coming from. And the second one, then time. Time is something that we see time and time again, pardon all the times there. Yeah. But it is a reason people have, that they're time poor. They're too busy. There isn't enough time in the day to get some exercise in. That is a barrier that I know you're passionate about helping people to overcome.
Yes. So time is something which 9 times out of 10 is what people who work with me will say is going to be their biggest barrier. I don't have the time. I have this going on and this. I'm back to work. I'm juggling this. I'm now going through perimenopause. I can't do this. I can't do that. Adding something else into my day feels really overwhelming. And I strip it back with them and I say, okay, what is your motivation to move? What is driving you to make this move into exercise? Oh, well, I want to be able to lift my kids. I want to be able to improve my bone density. I'm going into perimenopause now, so I want to be able to increase my muscle mass because I don't want to lose it. And a lot of women will, I think, they will create these barriers in their heads as opposed to breaking it down into something that's bite-sized. And I say to them, okay, well, if your motivation is all of these things, where can we begin? Let's begin with 10 minutes. Let's begin with 5 minutes. And then break it down. Because if you say to me, I want you to learn Spanish, I'm not going to suddenly be fluent tomorrow, but I will break it down and do 5 minutes one day and then perhaps create that habit. So I always explain to women that it's a bit like your brain is a bit like a woodland. You have paths that are well trodden, ones that are habits that are well trodden. So your paths are your habits, things like brushing your teeth, and they're well trodden paths. It might be that you used to be able to exercise and that path has now become quite overgrown and you're a bit fearful to go down it again. But in order for that to become a well trodden path, you've got to work at it. You can't just expect it to become a clear path again. You've got to get that neurological stimulus going again, and you've got to create that habit. So let's make it a small habit. Let's make it 5 minutes in your day where you think, right, I'm going to go and do some bodyweight squats while the kettle boils, or I'm going to do some lunges, or go for a 5-minute walk, a brisk walk around the block. It's getting them moving and making it part of their day. A lot of women as well will not prioritize themselves like they would other things in the day. Like I, for one, the to-do list is endless. With 3 kids, there's always a wash to go on. There's always breakfast bowls to tidy, probably from even the day before at this point. You know, there's always something going on. There's a meal to cook. And we're so good at prioritizing all of those things and not necessarily putting ourselves first as well. So it's about putting ourselves at the top of that priority list just for a couple of minutes and then building on that and creating those building blocks towards that success, towards that clear path so that we can go on to heavier lifting, longer sessions. But I think as well, in our 20s, we used to be able to push to those 40, 60-minute sessions. Then fast forward 20 years, you may not have the energy. Mm-hmm. Taking an hour out of your day, you know, if you do go to a gym, that's half an hour there, half an hour back, packing a bag, that could be 2 hours. So it's actually, okay, well, what can I do in half an hour? What can I do in 40 minutes and get the most out of it? And you can still get a really efficient workout. But I think so many of us feel we have to do that 60-minute intense high rocks class or that 60-minute weight training class that we used to be able to do. But actually, if you just do the small building blocks and build up to it, or that may not even be your goal, but instead it's just getting into a routine with it. And that's where the consistency shines through. And that's where results can begin to shine through as well. Because without consistency, it's very hard for that path to be well trodden, but also it's very hard to start seeing results or building on them and doing the progressive overload, which so many of us talk about as well.
And it is hard for people to prioritize themselves. I think everyone listening in will struggle with that. And your answer for that is very much that it's finding a strong enough goal, a strong enough reason to want to do the weights that helps you to prioritize yourself better.
Absolutely, because I think, again, a lot of us feel like, oh, Georgie, you must be born with motivation. I am not born motivated. I don't wake up every day being like, I'm going to crush it today. No, but again, it's a habit that I've formed over time. And it's a habit that I was never really in prior to having kids. It was actually after kids when I realized that this is something that's going to be really important for me to be able to run, jump, lift, carry without throwing out my back or anything like that. So I think when it comes to prioritizing, you have to find your why. You have to find what is it that's motivating you? How is this going to change your life? If you don't do it, what sacrifices will you be making in later life? And you've also got to think about all of the research that's coming out about osteoporosis, bone mineral density, muscle mass loss. And a lot of women are becoming a lot more aware of that. And I'm having more and more of them coming to me saying, I don't want to lose my muscle mass / I want to build it before I lose it, before I start losing it involuntarily. And I think that's really exciting as well, because then it focuses on the fact that women are doing it more for strength. They're doing it more for longevity rather than
toning.
Aesthetic. Toning. Not toning.
That word that sends you off the edge altogether.
So find your motivation.
Let's chat through some of the stages. You've mentioned perimenopause a couple of times here, so let's start with that.
Yep.
From a reason to hit the gym, to go to classes, to stay strong. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so during perimenopause, there are a lot of hormonal fluctuations. So obviously pre-perimenopause, there was a lot of pizza, you will have your normal cycle, regular or irregular, but then it becomes, your hormone levels change a little bit more erratically as you come into perimenopause. Now, I think a lot of people think, perimenopause is this really short period of time before you hit menopause. It can be 10 years. It can be anywhere from 35 to 45, and it can be up to 10 years roughly before you hit the day of menopause, which is 12 months after you've had your last period. So during those hormonal fluctuations, that's where our body can become less tolerant of exercise. Mm-hmm. So our bodies won't necessarily react in the same way they would have done in our 20s. So we become more exercise resistant, and a few changes can happen within our body as well. So we can start seeing increases in body fat. We can start seeing decreases in our mineral bone density, and also our muscle mass as well. So there's a whole host of other things. It's not a time to be fearful. It is a time of change within the body. So that's why something like resistance training, which can improve your muscle mass, improve your bone density, improve your insulin sensitivity as well, because we become more insulin resistant as we move into postmenopause. And by incorporating things like strength training and impact training, or sprint training. So you could do something, if you don't want to do high impact sprints, or you don't have the facility to be able to do that, you can do sprints on, say, a rower or a bike or in a pool, other ways of doing that as well. And that can help with your training and how you have to adapt it in the different stages of life as well. Because how we train in the perimenopause and postmenopause is going to be very different to how we train in our 20s. And I will have women come to me like, I used to be able to do this and this and this, and now I'm not seeing the same results. I've still got body fat, I've still got this. And then I also look at their lifestyle factors, and I think, okay, well, how much sleep are you getting? How's work? They could be in a very high-end role which increases their levels of cortisol, which we know is never a good thing for the body. But funny enough, what helps cortisol levels? Exercise. It doesn't have to be super intense. That might spike it a bit more, but something like a brisk walk can help with cortisol levels. You have to look at all the other factors surrounding them. If someone has kids, do they have a really hectic routine? As I said, fatigue, stress, all these things, they will all factor into how their exercise will affect their body, but also how their hormones will fluctuate as well.
Because in our 20s, we get away with that, don't we? It's easier to achieve the results. It's easier to lose weight or to get strong, to gain strength. As you get older, the lifestyle factors are more impactful on the results that you're going to get.
Massively. And also, when we're in our 20s, dare I say it, it's much easier to do things like meal prep. Mm-hmm. Whereas when we are in our 40s, we could easily be feeding a whole family. So we don't necessarily want to meal prep, and we don't want to be eating the same meals every day. What if we want to eat with our children? What if we want to go out for dinner? And it then can create a lot of stress around what they're eating. So sometimes meal prep isn't always possible. And also, a lot of people won't necessarily nutritionally balance themselves. Like, I'm not a dietitian, and if anyone ever wants diet advice or nutritional advice, I will always refer them on. But the basics of are they getting enough carbohydrates? Because carbohydrates are often demonized, especially when we get into postmenopause and also perimenopause as well. We do become a little bit more carb resistant, which is understandable why people would fear it and why there's so much out there saying, but also it's the main energy source. So if you are wanting to do your half marathons, or you're wanting to do your runs or your high rocks classes, you need carbs. And then what happens if we can't feed the brain? We can't feed our body. then we start getting cravings. And I think that side of things, that's a whole different kettle of fish when it comes to things like cravings and, you know, sitting down, watching Netflix and eating a load of sugar as well, which we're all guilty of doing every now and again. But you have to look back at what your day was. You know, did you nutritionally balance your day? Have you, could you have added more protein? Could you have added more high satiating fats and proteins to your diet to help keeping you fuller so you're not reaching for those sweet treats as well? But again, it's a lot easier to track all those things when we don't have more hectic lifestyles later on in life.
Of course. And it is important to say from a perimenopause and a menopausal perspective, it's not just the cardiovascular. You do need to do the strength training because, you know, commonly women, they'll walk, they'll swim. We need them to hit the gym. We need them to lift weights, whether it's their own weight at home or it's some dumbbells or barbells or kettlebells or in a gym scenario. That's really important from that kind of, you know, mid-life cycle on. Absolutely.
So from the age of 30, our muscle mass begins to decline in an involuntary way. So we don't... even if we strength train every single day, it will still begin to decline, only by a very small percentage every decade, but that increases once we hit perimenopause and menopause. So it is important. They say 150 minutes a week of cardiovascular exercise. Now, a lot of people think, oh, is that running? I was like, no, that's brisk walking. It can be swimming. It could be cycling your bike, or it could be that spin class that you enjoy. So 150 minutes of cardio broken down over the week is about 20 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are hitting their steps, they're hitting their cardio. But then when you say, okay, when was the last time you purposefully did some strength training? Oh, back when I was about 25. It's like, well, okay, well, now you're 45. So we need to get you lifting some weights again. Oh, like, I know I wouldn't be able to do that. Why not? It's too scary. But we want to be definitely encouraging women to be doing at least 2 strength training sessions a week on top of their cardiovascular. So as I said, that could be your 20-minute walks every day, getting your steps in, getting in that cardio. That's good for the brain, it's good for the body, good for the cardiovascular systems. But we want to be stimulating the muscles as well through strength training. And exactly as you said, Karl, as well, it doesn't have to be in a gym. It can be body weight. It is working against a resistance, and that resistance can be your body weight. Going up the stairs is a form of resistance.
Or all about the stairs. All about the stairs.
Exactly.
That's for sure. Postnatal, the 4 R's. Let's chat about those.
Yes. So I go by the 4 R's when it comes to postpartum recovery.
You say it much nicer than I do. You have that lovely twang to your accent. It just comes out poetically.
You're very kind. So they really come down to 4 basic pillars, but these are not ones that you have to jump through each one to get to the end. Mm-hmm. They are all interchangeable at different stages because a postpartum journey is always up and down. It is never linear, as much as you would love it to be, as much as we love to have routine and prediction of what's going to happen. It is not going to be. There will be bumps in the road. And I always focus at the beginning on that rest and recovery. And a lot of people will think, oh, that means just sitting down and recovering because it could have been that person had stitches, they could have had C-section, they could have had things like episiotomy, they could be recovering from quite major surgery or a traumatic birth, or just any kind of birth is pretty traumatic for the body, let's be honest. So what we want to be encouraging mums to do is having that element of rest and that recovery, but also incorporating gentle exercise, because a lot of us focus on, yes, we want to be exercising for the body. You know, we want to be getting strong. We don't want to be becoming too stiff. It will help with aches and pains. But we don't often talk about the mental side of exercise. We don't often talk about how postpartum depression can be helped through exercise. So you can actually decrease your likelihood of having postpartum depression if you exercise within the early weeks postpartum, but also within pregnancy as well. So it's encouraging mums to not necessarily sit and recover for weeks on end. Yeah, fair enough, a couple of days is fine, but then getting up and moving, going 10 minutes down the road to get a coffee or doing a quick lap around the block, something small, something simple is the kind of rest and recovery. Then we focus a little bit more on rehab. And that could be, depending on their birth, it can be something like pelvic floor rehab. So I'm not a pelvic health physio, so I always encourage mums to go to a physio if it's available to them after giving birth, because we can see so much about what's going on the outside, but actually what's going on the inside can make a massive difference to how our recovery goes as well. So I'll always encourage mums to go to a physiotherapist, and they can assess internal and external any areas that perhaps they need to work on. So that would be the rehab side. So it might be their glutes, their bum muscles, essentially. They can often weaken. They can lose muscle mass during pregnancy and postpartum. So it can be an area of focus, pelvic floor, as I've mentioned before, and also just in general kind of hip stability, your core as well. Because if you think about pregnancy, your core is stretched, and 100% of pregnancies end in diastasis, which is abdominal separation. So your core needs that time to recover as well. So we're talking kind of more about the rehab side. So more gentle exercises just to reconnect with the body again, particularly if you've had a C-section. That is major surgery. And I think we take it for granted sometimes, because if someone has knee surgery, they are given 4 or 5 sessions of physio afterwards. You know, they are spoon-fed exactly what they need to be doing in order to get back walking again, or running, or whatever it is they want to be doing. But when we have a C-section, we are given a pamphlet and then sent on our way with very little understanding of what it is that actually has happened and how we can help our bodies in the rehab side. So we're focusing then on the rehab and making sure that we can reconnect with the body, and understanding that these things take time. You're also dealing with potentially feeding the baby yourself, the demand of the baby, sleepless nights, lest we forget, which never end, the sleepless nights, fatigue, stress, all of these things that I was mentioning as well about the perimenopause and menopause side. So you're dealing with a fatigued body, and then having to try and factor in exercise. It goes back to those little nuggets of exercise that I was saying before, where you start with 5 or 10 minutes of that rehab. So you're not overwhelming yourself whilst trying to keep this teeny tiny human alive. And if it's your first, it's really, really daunting. If it's your third, it's really, really daunting, because there's these whole new way of life with everything that's going on. And then moving on from the rehab, we move more into the rebuild. So that is where you start bringing back in the resistance training. Now, previously, there would be a lot around don't exercise, lifting weights before 6 or 8 or 10 weeks, depending on your birth. They're kind of flipping the script on that now, which is really exciting, because obviously if someone is trained the whole way through their pregnancy, why can't they start lifting things a little bit heavier if it feels good for them and they want to? So you may not necessarily want to go in lifting super heavy straight away, and I wouldn't recommend that. However, there's nothing wrong with starting with some bodyweight squats, adding in a little bit of resistance, maybe holding the baby while you do it, or adding in some resistance band work as well. But for those who weren't able to exercise through pregnancy for whatever reason, they perhaps might feel even more discouraged to move because they're fearful of what may happen. So again, that's where we bring in those short, meaningful sessions that can involve body weight, and making sure that you're monitoring any symptoms and things that might be getting worse and better. And it's about checking in with how you're feeling. Is your body reacting well to this, or are you feeling symptoms that perhaps shouldn't be there, or you feel shouldn't be there, and perhaps you need to taper it down a bit? So then we begin the rebuild process, and that rebuild process will be very different for everyone. There will be some weeks you won't get 1 workout in. There will be some weeks you get 5 in of 10 minutes and you feel frickin' fantastic. But then the whole point is that you're trying to remain as consistent as possible so you can gradually see those results as you rebuild over time. And I think a lot of people think that it's about this bounce back culture. And I've spoken about this before on my Instagram about how we put so much pressure on ourselves to be where we were pre-children. And it's not about that. It's about actually looking forward and seeing what new goals we can reach, but understanding that this may take a little bit more time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was your postpartum recovery. So it could take someone 2 years to get back to running half marathons or marathons. It could take them 5 or 6. Your journey is always going to be different to somebody else's, but it's about putting those right building blocks in place so that you can start the journey, get that consistency, and build on it from there. And then the final R of my 4 pillars is resume. So that is resuming the things that you love to do. So it might have been you're a marathon runner, CrossFitter, and you want to get back to doing that. And you can, but you've got to think about those three pillars before. You've got to think about the rest and recovery, which there are certain times we'll have to come back around. And then you've got to still focus on the rehab side and also the rebuilding side. It might be that some days you push yourself too hard and you have, so you need to taper it down again. That can sometimes feel difficult because you're used to pushing to new limits. But sometimes we've got to understand, appreciate, and accept that our bodies have been through a lot of anatomical changes and mental changes as well, hormonal changes. So we have to give ourselves the time and the credit to be able to build back to what we want to be doing or build forward. You know, for example, I couldn't run more than a kilometre without hyperventilating before I had kids. And then I ran my first half marathon last year after my third. And I'm about to do my first high rocks competition. None of that stuff would even be on my radar because I've seen what it's like to try and reach new goals in motherhood. And I think a lot of people will see motherhood or even menopause as almost a stop in their life and feel, oh, this is the end of me. I'm now someone else and I have to change who that is. Well, you don't have to. What if you could be a bigger, better, stronger version, faster version of what you were before?
It's all about the goals and the goal setting. Chat to me about the key takeaways you would like women to take from the episode that we're recording today across all across all ages.
Key takeaways would be that start small. So if you haven't been in a gym for a while, or even not a gym, but you have a dusty set of dumbbells at the back of the cupboard, get them out, grab one of them and start with 10 minutes, or don't grab them at all and do body weight. Start small and build consistency. That is the most important thing, because once that habit is formed, then we can start building on it as well. The second is don't fear resistance training. It won't make you bulky. You'd have to work super hard to get there. You need a lot of protein. Focus on resistance training as part of your daily routine, part of your weekly routine. Walking is great. Cardio is great. But resistance training is what's going to put the years onto your life at the other end. Also, honor your body, energy levels, and also hormonal changes as well. Because there will be some days that you don't feel like it and some days that you absolutely do. So you don't have to give 100% to every workout. And I think sometimes we really push ourselves to give 100% every time. And I know a lot of mums on my accountability groups will say, oh, I know I didn't give my best effort. And I reply, but you still did it. You still showed up and you still did it. And they're like, yeah, you're right. You don't have to give 100% every time. Give somewhere between 0 and 100 and you still showed up for yourself. And the last is be proud of yourself for starting this journey, wherever it is, whether it's postpartum, whether it's perimenopause, or whether it's whether it's perimenopause or postmenopause. Be proud of yourself for starting the journey, because the second you pick up a set of dumbbells or the second you start squatting with body weight, that is the beginning of your future. It's not about quick fixes. Exercise is a journey, and it's one which is based on consistency and enjoyment. So be proud of yourself and enjoy it along the way.
Boom. No messing. If people want to find you on Instagram, where can they find you?
Yeah, so it's Georgy Dillon _PT on Instagram, or you can find me at my website, which is www.georgydillonpt.com.
Amazing. Georgy Dillon, thank you so much for joining us in studio today. Folks, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode of Real Health with me, Karl Henry. As ever, you know where we are, at Karl Henry PT on Instagram, realhealth@independent.ie, and on the Irish Independent website. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week for more Real Health. Slán go fóill.